Today on Sewing 101, we're going to learn how to applique and then we're going to apply that to make a pillow. Prep your materials to create your cushion. You're going to need some fabric that will be cut into squares and rectangles. To prep your fabric, measure the insert you're going to use for the inside of your cushion. My insert is 13 by 13. I like my pillows to be quite stuffed, so add seam allowance, but don't make it too large, otherwise the pillow won't look full. Applique is when you create a design or pattern on a piece of fabric using other pieces of material. It can be very simple or a more complicated design. Today we are going to do a simple applique. I've created a pattern in the shape of a heart just with a piece of paper. You can print something off the computer or design something yourself. To applique, you want to use a fabric that's not going to fray easily. For an easier edge, you don't want to use a stretchy fabric because that's going to cause you issues when you're sewing it. Today we're going to use a piece of felt. You can easily get felt from your local craft store. It comes in sheets like this in lots of different colours and is very easy to work with, so a great fabric to start with. So first off, you're going to cut out your applique, use your pattern and pin it in place and cut round it. When cutting out pieces of patterns, it's best to try and leave it flat and use the hard surface as a stable point when you're cutting. Today we are creating a pillow and the applique is the design on the pillow. We have one side of the pillow, a square, cut out to the right size with seam allowance, and we're going to apply our applique. I have found the midpoint of the fabric and just marked it with pins, and the midpoint of the heart, and we're just going to place it down. Check to see that it looks like it's in the right place and pin it in place. The best thing to do for applique is to tack your pieces in place before you take it to the machine. Tacking means that you're going to hand sew a very rough and large stitch onto the top of the fabric to hold the piece in place, and this will be in place of pins. When you get to the machine, you're going to be spinning the fabric around and it can cause it to not lay flat, so tacking is definitely the best approach. You want to do it in a contrasting colour so that it's easy to remove. When tacking, I also don't do it too close to the edge so that when you machine sew, it doesn't seal the stitches in and they're easier to remove afterwards. And it can be really quick and rough stitching just to hold it in place. Doesn't need to take a long time. Now if your applique had different pieces of fabric and maybe different colours, you would do it a piece at a time. remove the pins, and you are ready to take it to the machine. To applique, we're going to use a zigzag stitch. You can opt to use the same colour as your applique, your base fabric, or you can do a contrasting colour to make more of a defined edge. I'm going to use black today for my edge. I've gone to my machine and I've done some tests to make sure that we've got a good stitch, and also figure out what kind of zigzag we're going to use, how wide of the zigzag and how deep. This is kind of your preference. Medium one is good to start. I just want to consider things like the type of fabrics you're using. So if you're not using a fabric that doesn't fray, you want to have a tighter zigzag because it will protect the edge and stop it from fraying in the long run. Let's head over to the machine and applique on our heart. We're going to start off the same way we did when we learnt to zigzag. Secure the stitch by going forward and back a couple times, and then you're going to sew around the edge, and the idea is that you want the needle to go off of your applique and then onto your applique, so it catches the applique fabric and the base fabric. As you can see, when you come to things like corners, you want to just gradually move the fabric as you are sewing. It can be a bit of an art, and just practice is going to make that perfect. Just try and go as slow as you can and feed the fabric and keep it as flat as possible so that the applique doesn't start to pucker. Okay, if you get to a corner or a point or anything that's too hard to gradually flow around as you're sewing, the trick is to do similar to when you start and finish your stitch. Make sure the needle is down and at the point position or at the corner, and then you're going to lift your presser foot, and then you can spin your fabric to the new angle. And then again, repeat to turn, and you'll be facing the other way. We have finished sewing our heart, and you can see I chose to use a black thread, which creates quite a defined edge. You want to iron it afterwards just so that the fabric can settle together, and then we're just going to remove our tacking stitch. Just snip near the ends where you secured it, and then close your snips, and the stitches should just easily come out. And there you have your applique. Now if you turn it over, you'll actually see that the pattern is on the other side, and you can see your neat stitching. Okay, now let's go and create the rest of the pillow. For the other side of the pillow, we're going to create an envelope so that you can slot the insert in. To complete the other side, you're going to have two pieces of fabric, and they're going to be half the width plus a little bit for the overlap of the envelope, and plus the seam allowance. So what we're going to do is finish one edge on both sides so that it's nice and neat. To do this, we're going to mark an inch along one edge. We're then going to take it to our iron, and we're going to iron the edge to this line that you've created to create 1/2 inch. Once that's in place, you're going to iron again, turning it over to create the edge. Once we've ironed the seam in place, we're then going to secure with a line of stitching along the edge. On one of the sides, before you do your stitching, you want to put the ribbon in place. The ribbon is going to be fastening. I've decided on a colour that matches my applique, so we're going to fold it in half like this, putting the ends together. And then we're going to find the halfway point on our seam. And we're going to pin in place so that when the seam is sewn, it's going to catch. We have secured our edge with the line of stitching as well as the ribbon in place. Now we're going to assemble the pillow. So we've grabbed our 3 pieces and we're going to place the applique face up, and then we're going to put the other pieces face down so that the right sides are together. Making sure that the ribbon is on the top, and then we're going to pin the pieces in place. We've pinned the pieces in place, and we're now going to go to the machine to secure all the way around the edge. We have sewn all our sides together, and we're just going to finish off by trimming the corners so we get a nice neat corner when we pull it through. Making sure that each corner is secured so the stitching doesn't come undone. And then we're going to pull through your finished pillow to the right side. And give it an iron so that the seams are nice and ironed out, and it will sit nice and flat. We're going to iron it out the same way we did for our masks. You want to get the seam nice and flat, so just using your thumbs, roll between your thumbs and then give it an iron. And you can roll and iron as you go. You might also need to take a pin and just tease out the corner so you get a nice point and a nice shaped pillow. And just do that all the way around. For the finishing touch, you want to add your button to create the fastening. So find where your button's going to go and sew it on. If you're not sure how to sew a button, go check out my tutorial on how to sew on a button correctly. We now have our finished pillow cover with the button for the fastening. You just pop in a pillow insert and you can decorate your home. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Sewing 101 as we learn how to applique and make a pillow. Now go create your own.